Isn't it amazing how adding a color to a room or a texture can completely change its appearance and style? As an interior designer, Nancee Brown understands how to coordinate and combine those basic elements to create an extraordinary package. She's here to share her insights with us. I'm so glad you are, Nancee.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. So, where do we start when the possibilities seem endless? I mean, we've got 4 fabric books in front of us, and I'm just looking at all of these fabrics. I wouldn't even know where to start.
You do have to have a theme in mind, something that how you live, your lifestyle, if you're casual or traditional, what colors are your favorites so that every time you walk into a room, it does make your heart sing, something that really you just love and can't live without.
Okay, so theme being a feeling, an emotion?
A country feel, a city feel,
okay.
A very pastel palette versus a jewel tone palette. And you really have to think about your lifestyle, because if you have young children, for example, or if you like to entertain frequently, those elements need to be combined into the design.
All right, so if I've got a room, because I do at home, and right now I've got a beautiful brown leather couch that I really like, and then I have beige walls and an off-white carpet, and that's all I've done so far because I haven't been able to make a decision, but I know I like that couch.
Right.
So how do you work off of something that's pre-existing, something you're not getting rid of? Maybe it's great-grandma's.
Well, the good news is, though, you have some neutral colors. Brown and beige, you can't go wrong. So then for you, I would suggest that you see, what is your favorite color? Is it blue? Is it green? Is it red or orange? And then introduce that as an accent. So one example that perhaps you can use as a takeoff for your own design is something I had done for a client where this was her starting point of artwork. Multicolored, beautiful collage, and it's teals and reds. So I introduced fabrics with teals and reds and added real pizzazz with the pillows. But essentially, as you can see, it's a neutral envelope, quite similar to your own room. So, and one bit of advice I give to everyone is don't be afraid of color, because life is too short to live in beige. So keep your beige envelope, but add some punch and make it lively.
To it. So, and if we've got a color that we're starting with, that we've already got in our room, that we know, then how do we add color to that, or add, how many colors should be in a room?
Well, that's a tricky question, because you can have a lot of color or you can have a little, but again, you have to go back to your theme. If you're busy-oriented person and you like contrast, you can use a complementary color to your main, but I would stick within a palette. So say if you have red, for example, stick with the oranges and golds. If you have blue, for example, stick with the greens and yellows. So if you look at the color wheel, you can do that. And when you're picking paints in your local paint store, you have those fan decks that give you a direction of gradation of color, and usually the paint companies are very accommodating, and
those
they
little
put
samples,
they put nice colors together, so you can use that as a good starting point as well.
Fabulous. So let's say I have a first fabric. What am I going to do? How do I choose coordinating fabrics? Where do I go from there?
In a neutral room, for example, you might want to stick with something neutral for the drapes, adding an element of texture. The linen has a beautiful texture, whereas the softer fabric of the velvet, I wouldn't necessarily do it for drapes unless you wanted a very heavy room, a library. So that's where, again, you come back to the theme. What makes your heart sing?
So we're not just talking about what does it look like, but we're talking about what does it feel like.
Correct.
And when that's where you come back to the theme. So the theme really is important. First thing that you want to do is know, how do you want to feel in this room? How do you want it to feel for you? If you want something that's very cozy, very womb-like, then maybe the velvet might work for you if you want.
Deeper, richer colors.
Oh,
that kind of thing. And you can introduce perhaps jewel tones.
Oh, look at that. That's beautiful.
This we wanted a formal living room. So if formal is your theme, then you go with more refined fabrics. For example, here, after selecting the rug, which in this case was the starting point, we went with silk walls. And that was a leap. That's a real, trust me on that one. But if you decide you want a cocoon room and that's your theme, then you have to be brave and go for it sometimes.
Well, the texture on that is wonderful. I'm noticing so many different textures.
It's a diamond pattern, correct. And then the next aspect of design to bear in mind when you're pulling your room together is introducing a variety of textures. We have a small scale on the sofa, a smaller still scale on the chenille.
You say a scale?
The size of the pattern. So, for example,
I see.
That would be a medium. This is on the busier side, but something, you know, smallish pattern, smallish pattern.
Oh,
so
okay.
Things
so
where
thinking about that.
Right, you combine the textures to pull it, to make it cohesive.
Okay.
And then in this instance, add a punch with the dark green bench on the opposite side to pull it from the rug. You're constantly going back to the one source. So if you start with the rug.
So if I've got something like this fabric and it's got all these textures and it's got this feeling to it, I look at the colors and I would just have no idea where to start.
Well, the basic rule of thumb is to pick colors from that fabric. So you can use a lot of cream and have this as your accent. Then you can pick up some of the salmon color as well as that dark tan color to use as an accent throughout the room, so that the other choices pull it together. And another example relating to the paints is when you look through fabric books, this is a color book. So within this book, you will find a lot of things that all look good with it. Correct.
Are they typically like that?
Quite often it's a move that vendors are putting books together with now.
It makes things so much easier.
It does. It really does.
It really does, because sometimes you're afraid to do anything and get paralyzed with that fear of I'm going to put things together and they're going to clash or something's not going to be right. Or,
right.
I mean, is there a right and is there a wrong?
In some ways, yes, and in some ways, no. But because interior design is such a personal statement, so sometimes you can see something in the magazine and you think, too much going on, or gee, it's so plain, I'm missing the statement. But I think but in my mind, there is a rule of thumb about balance of color, so that things aren't jarring, yet you can have an accent. So it's a very personal choice, and if it's going to feel right and look right for your own home, then the answer is no, you can break whatever rules you feel. You know.
Now, I know you brought another room.
Well,
that
this
you had
room
designed.
is a different feel
Look
again.
At that. 3 completely different feels.
This client requested an orange dining room, which is a challenge,
That's
but
interesting.
It was a lot of fun. And there's a couple of points here. One is, from the orange, I was able to work with the client about the theme of an Asian influence. So the bamboo cloth, grass cloth to introduce more texture.
Was that something they were interested in?
Just orange, and then I found this fabulous paper.
Oh, nice.
But the fun of helping the client pull this together, because really it was her idea, that we introduced bamboo for texture, silk for texture, painted tin valances for texture, and it all pulls together because, again, as I had mentioned earlier, with the color family, the oranges and the yellows go well together. Punch it up with some gold and it gels.
So I should be willing to take a risk.
Yes.
Start with my theme.
Yes.
Move to my color. Think of my fabric. Don't be afraid to mix and match. Just keep in mind the scale of my fabrics.
Go for the texture.
Go for something that you love.
Exactly. And that will make a very happy interior.
Nancee, thank you so much for coming along.
Well,
I just
thank you
might
so
take
much.
a risk now.